Everybody knows you're a motorcycle rider. How did you happen to take it up, and what was your first bike?
When I was about 18, I wanted a bike. And so I tried a bunch of them. I think the first one I ever really rode was a Ducati. And so I learned to ride from my friend Ramblin' Jack Elliott, who had a Norton, like BSA or something like that, that came out of, it was an English bike. And he brought it over here, and I loved the thing. Later on in life, when I was about 19 or 20, we had some friends that we would go to all these dirt bike races and stuff like that. And we were all riding around on Triumphs. That was probably around 1965, 1966, somewhere back in there. I didn't have my own bike until probably the early 80s, when somebody asked me to do a piece for a movie about motorcycles. The guy's name was Peter Starr, and he has gone on to make some of the greatest motorcycle movies ever. This one that I was involved with was called Take It to the Limit. And in order to do that, I had to have a bike. And so he or somebody who were the filmmakers called up the local place, and said, we got to get Arlo a bike, something. So they gave me it was like a 400 Honda. It was called a Hawk. And I rode that for a while until my kid decided it would be better off going through the woods than on the road. All the lights came off, there was nothing left of it when he was done. But it was a fun bike. And once that was toast, I thought it would be really nice to get something that I could actually use that would be too big for him to kill. And that was this bike right here.
You don't see Gilroy Indians that often. How did you come by it? And I mean, it's going to be a collector's item someday because the company didn't last that long.
I don't really remember how I came upon it. I might have been just going through the newspaper and looking, and this was a used bike, but it didn't have that many miles on it, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 miles was it. So it was fairly new, even though the age of it was probably a little older. So at some point, probably around 2005, something like that, I got this bike and been riding it ever since. I love the thing.
I'm sure it's safe to assume you've never gone 150 miles per hour downhill on a mountain road.
Sideways, and 150 miles an hour sideways and 500 feet down at the same time. I think that's the quote. I've done it in film and in theory.
Oh. I know in the motorcycle song you explain how you wrote the song, but what is the actual origin of the song?
I've told it so many different times in so many different ways over so many different years and decades that it's really hard for me to know the reality from the fiction I've created. You tell the same story over and over and over again every night of your life, and there's one little incident that takes 30 seconds to happen, and you've told the same 3-minute song for 1,000 times. Well, it's 3,000 times 3 minutes. So the reality of it is mired in early Alzheimer's or whatever. I have no idea how it came about, except I was riding here around Sheffield or one of those towns, and I remember I was on one of these Triumphs I was telling you about, and the peg hit a root, spun me out right off of that thing. And so I went for a ride, as it were, through the air, did some acrobatics up there, it came down, and wrote that song.
So that's the story today that you're sticking to.
That's to the best of my memory, which may have been altered in flight.
How do you feel about the fact that that song is now really a part of motorcycle lore? It's something that every motorcyclist knows and every motorcyclist loves.
Well, it's kind of fun because, where I every time I go to a place where there's a lot of bikes or something like that, people will ride by going, "I don't want a vehicle," or something like that, and I'm going, oh, jeez, how many times you got to hear that? But I get it. These things become part of the soundtrack of your life. It's not something people go around thinking about a whole lot. It's just there, and I love it.
Do you get to ride that much or not?
Well, we're on the road about 8 or 9 months a year. So when you get off the road, if it's in December, I ain't riding around here. So there has to be a confluence of weather, time off, and and the bike has to be nearby. So when those things converge, I'm out there. I'm down the road. This is one of the few countries in the world, one of the few places in the world where you can ride for 20 days and obviously no more than a few hundred miles a day and not have to go through a border, get a ID check or a passport needed or something like that, where you can spend the same kind of money. I think there's something to be said for that. This is still a country that welcomes people who have the guts to get out there. One of the great things about having written the song is that I know that I can go into any town along the road, and if there's a bunch of bikes out in front of a bar or something, I can go in there. And if they start giving me trouble, I'll just tell them I'm the guy who wrote the freaking song, and I won't have any more trouble. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a passport.
Yeah.
I got mine.